We are live. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you are tuning in. We do so appreciate you spending your time with us. Um, as you can see, it is Ryan and I this evening. Our fearless leader has been called away to complete a special mission that only he can complete. Ryan, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm good to happy to be here. I'm happy to be out from under the tyrannical shackles of Gary. He really honestly makes this podcast worse.
Well,
Uh,
Gary signs my checks for this podcast, so I'm not going to say anything bad about him. But
that's true. Well, let me know when you get that.
you're not getting paid for this. Awkward.
I'm getting billed actually.
Ironic. That's kind of wild.
It's a hot takes $5.
That's what we're charging the listeners, actually. No, it sucks Gary's not here, but the show must go on, right? And we apologize for being late. There were life happens sometimes, and things get in the way, so we're a little bit off schedule, but that's all right. We keep going here. Um, as I'm sure most people who are tuning into the show know, it was All Star Weekend last weekend, so we don't have real games to discuss. But it was All Star Weekend. There's some coaching news. Adam Silver had some quotes that I thought were very interesting and led me to develop a theory about the future of the NBA. We're going to get into that. I'll give you guys my theory. We'll get Ryan's thoughts on it. But we're going to start with the NBA All Star Weekend. It was an All Star Weekend. It happened. It we got to watch basketball occur. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Dad.
We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, Dad. Um, Ryan, there was a lot of discourse online after the All-Star game, and we could talk about all of the other events that occurred prior to the game, the dunk contest and all that separately. But the game itself received kind of a poor review, I thought, from the overall general NBA discourse. Even Adam Silver, when he gave the award to the Eastern Conference, who ended up winning the game, said, "Congrats on scoring the most points," I guess, right?
Yep.
Right. Do you think that the NBA also game specifically is broken? Do you think it can be recovered? How did you feel about the game and just the discourse around the game itself?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues. One, I'll bring up a couple just to be brief, but one of the issues, I think we need to dispel the notion that like going 60% at a game is going to get you hurt, because that's like historically what guys did, like 60 to 80%. Like I've watched the old All-Star games, I watch weird stuff.
It's true.
And like they're not going hard, but they're not. I've watched Magic like dribble up the court and everyone kind of just like sticks an arm out, and then it gets into the half court and they like try a little bit. Like that's fine, do that. Like
Yeah.
just like do something. So I think we need to dispel the notion that you're gonna get hurt if you think about the game too hard. I guess
Too much brain power.
Like you're just as likely to get hurt not doing anything, like in my opinion, than doing like a very small amount. Maybe, and if there is a difference, I think the difference is minuscule, right? So I would prefer to like coaches, and coaches probably are telling that, like the coaches of the game is probably telling them to try. Their personal coaches are probably telling them not to try, and their agents and like all this stuff. It's just unfortunate the league has become such a money making machine that I think that has hurt it, right? Because it's like how many millions of dollars do I lose if I hurt myself here, kind of thing. The other thing is it's just not very prestigious. Uh, I think for a long time it was considered, to be an extremely prestigious event. Like I talked about, I'm a big fan of old basketball history. Some of the first All Star games have really interesting like stories. The Basketball Players Union is basically created at an All Star game. There's a famous story where Oscar Robertson kind of got the All Stars together and said, "Hey, let's just not go out and play until they give us a union, like a bargaining union, basically." He was doing this with a lawyer, but they were in the locker room, and only one guy said he didn't want to do that and he wanted to play, and it was Wilt Chamberlain. uh,
Of course.
But this is like that's a historic event, right? That's like they had so much leveraging power because the All-Star game was such a big deal.
Yeah.
At that time to see that combination of talent, to see Oscar Robertson and Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell and like all these guys play. I don't think any of us feel that anymore. I think it's like, yeah, we see whatever. Like Jason Tatum's playing with Donovan Mitchell. That's cool. Like awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe there's a way to change it where it becomes more prestigious. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't love that it's lost a lot of its luster. And I also think it's in a bad time slot. I think it's a bad idea from the NBA to put it right after the Super Bowl as like the opening event after the Super Bowl. It's like, hey, this is the NBA. If you're going to do that, make it look good.
Yeah.
Because if I'm like a guy who's like, I'm not sure, like I like basketball, but like I don't know if I watch the NBA, like the regular season. Let's watch the All-Star game. If you're one of our friends' spouse who wants to watch the All-Star game and then is like, wow, this sucks. It doesn't look good, right? So like maybe move it up. Like it doesn't have to be right after the Super Bowl. I think that doesn't help just from a marketing perspective. If the game's going to be as like lackadaisical as it is, that's my opinion on that. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of issues. I think the mindset of players has changed. Guys like Jokic and Luka like clearly don't care, and that's fine. Like, I would rather them just see them do goofy events.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be more interesting. Like, you make the All-Star game. All right, you have to be in the dunk contest. Like three of y'all have to be in the dunk contest. 3 of y'all have to be in the 3-point contest. 9 of y'all are going to be in the skills competition. Like, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'd at least try. I think at that. And yeah, maybe give them more money. Like I don't know what to do. Like they already get money for charity. I think if they win, like I think that's how that works. The other option is do the baseball thing where you give home court advantage to the winning conference, which you hear a lot. I'm fine with that too. I just think the NBA doesn't want to commit to that just because they're worried about making it too competitive. I think.
Yeah.
Because baseball can be like as competitive as you want, and the injury risk doesn't really go up or down too much. Basketball, making it like a legitimate, like competitive, like advantage to winning the game could cause the injury issue to tip into dangerous territory. So that could be tough too. But I don't know. They got to find an incentive or move it so it's not right after the Super Bowl. Yeah, they have. Baseball's the only like legit one, really.
Yeah. It's the baseball one is the one that is closest to regular season play.
Yep.
Than are the other sports.
At least the NFL is like kind of embracing like the goofiness. They're like, we're gonna play flag football.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. Like at least that's interesting. I've never seen that before. Why don't we do a 3-on-3 tournament for the All-Star game? There's my idea.
Yeah. I like that idea a lot.
And then we just draft them. They're already not playing defense, so just put less people on the court.
Yeah.
To play like so it doesn't look so bad. When Jokic lets a guy go by him, it's like, well, they're playing threes. There's so much space, like he can't guard them. It's like, no, he doesn't want to, but like, I think that'd be cool.
Like, I think it'd be really cool.
Something silly like that, like I don't know.
It's not good though. I agree. It's a terrible product they put on the court. The actual game itself, the skill stuff is really cool. I like that in the skills competition, the host city gets to field a team. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I do like that.
So, you got Miles Turner and Ben Mathurin and Halliburton out there competing together. I thought that's a unique spin they put on things. I do appreciate that they went back to the East and West, kind of an homage to the way that it originally, well, the way that I remember it being as a child, I think that, and you made this point, the NBA has become such a money-making machine that they're almost shooting themselves in the foot doing so, specifically in regards to All-Star Weekend, right? When you and I were kids, how often did you get to see the best player on Portland play, living in Texas? Hardly ever, right? You'd see them when they came to Houston, and
avoid them.
Well, yeah, okay. But
yeah.
My point is, like, you would not see the best player on Washington unless he was playing in Washington, or like he was playing in Houston, or Houston was playing in Washington, or he made an All-Star game, and that's where you get to see him, and you get to see him play with your favorite player and my favorite player, and yada yada yada. Right? The NBA has become so accessible at your fingertips. You and I have League Pass. Gary has League Pass. Joe Schmo has League Pass because it's $100 and you can watch every basketball game the entire season, right? So couple that with social media. Every other post on Instagram or my Twitter or whatever is an NBA highlight. It's Bleacher Report list here. It's Yahoo Sports this, right? Like the NBA is so in your face, and because unlike football and to a certain extent baseball, right? Because they don't do a very good job of marketing their stars. But football, they have a helmet on and all these pads, like you don't really get to see them as a person, so they're less face recognizable than are these NBA All-Stars. We know what freaking Jason Tatum's tattoos look like, man. Like they are so accessible to us that we feel like we have the ability to watch them every single night if we choose to do so. As opposed to our childhood, where the only time that I would see the best player in Boston, or if I was a kid, I would have seen maybe 3 of freaking Tyrese Halliburton's games ever in his career because he's never played in the playoffs, and he's come to Washington only a handful of times, right? Like we have the ability to watch these guys play. You can pick and choose who you want to see every single night. That like watching them play in an All-Star game where they don't give a shit about it because they're not making any money and they want to avoid the injury, like you're talking about. They don't care. So like, yeah, I can watch this guy play in a game that matters on a Wednesday, and then Saturday night, do I really want to sit down and watch a game that starts 40 minutes after the projected start time to see him play 26 minutes of non-defensive basketball? Like, I agree that the game is broken. I don't know what the correct fix is for it, though. There were some ridiculous fixes thrown out on the internet this weekend. Like, the winning team gets to pick the losing team's game fit that they walk into the arena with. The losing team gets their Instagram DMs leaked. Like, just all sorts of wild stuff being tossed out. The losing team has to be slapped by each player of the winning team. Like, just humiliating things, right? Obviously, those are absurd and ridiculous and will never happen. But I don't know what the correct, like maybe it's just a money thing. And the players have kind of come out and talked about that, saying, hey, similar to the way that the in-season tournament, we won money, we should do that in the All-Star game. Mm-hmm. Well, the issue with that is everybody who's playing in the All-Star game is making $35 million or more. The reason the money worked for the in-season tournament is because you have 11th man on the bench making $850,000. $500,000 makes a lot of difference to them, right? Like that's tangible difference-making money to a 10th, 11th man on a bench, as opposed to Trae Young, who's going to make $52 million next year. It's like, what does he care about $500,000? He doesn't, So I don't think the money aspect of it is the way to go. I heard one very funny one where he said if you want LeBron James to play hard in the playoffs, the MVP play hard in the All-Star game, the MVP of the All-Star game gets to start and have the NBA fund a school in Akron, Ohio. Kind of stepping on LeBron's block there a little bit.
That's a wild one.
Yeah, like if Dame, who won MVP, wants to start a freaking school in Akron, Ohio, the NBA will cash roll that, and LeBron James just has to live that there's now a Dame Lillard school in Akron, Ohio. I thought that one was really funny. But yeah, I think you and I both agree on it that the All-Star game is a very diminished product as opposed to what it was years and years ago. And there's many reasons for it, and I don't exactly know what they are. It's compounding reasons. And I don't know what the true fix is. But I hope they get it right because the All-Star game has traditionally been a very big deal. You said it's not as prestigious as it used to be. I totally agree with that. I think making All-NBA is a much more prestigious thing, especially because it's now linked to contracts. Unfortunately, I don't love the linking of the contracts thing, but I understand why that came into place and why All-NBA is now so much more prestigious than is making the All-Star game. That being said, I didn't really enjoy the dunk contest, but I enjoyed the three-point contest. I enjoyed the skills competition. I enjoyed the Steph versus Sabrina thing. That was the most popular event of the entire weekend, honestly, watching the two of them go at it. aside from the game, Ryan, what was your favorite event that you partook in this weekend?
I like the skills challenge. I like that format. I do agree that the Steph Sabrina thing was probably the most interesting, like bite-sized thing because it's pretty quick. Like once I actually got going, it was like 3-4 minutes total probably.
Yeah.
Uh, skills challenge. The only one I don't love in that one is the very first event because they can never do it right,
Mm-hmm.
and like that just annoys me every time. They go the wrong way and they're like they have to turn all the way back. I don't know why that annoys me so much, but it does. uh, but yeah, I like the passing thing. I think is interesting. The shooting one is like kind of interesting. You find out that they don't really like know what they're doing strategy wise. Like they're not really thinking about it too much.
Yeah.
Like I just want to say if your strategy is to launch a logo shot where your teammates have to get the rebound, that thing, if you hit the rim, it's going flying.
Yeah.
It wastes so much time when you could shoot a corner three for 4 points.
Yeah.
I would just have a guy shooting corner threes and take like the mid-range jumper. That would be the entire thing, just over and over again, and you'd win. Like I think every time because they jack up terrible shots. I just want to throw that out there. I love that event, but man, they're dumb.
Yeah, but it looks so much cooler to make a logo pull up. Like,
yeah, you make one, and now the guys made 4 corner threes, so you're down 12-5 or 16-5.
Yep. No, I totally agree. I think a lot of the times what happens is like they show up to the arena and then they read the rules and they walk out in the court and compete. Like I think that's kind of what happens. They do a little warm up jog in the tunnel and they're like, oh, we're on. Like, which I don't blame them. Like I get it. I would probably do the same thing if I were them, right? Like you've done 100 autograph signings, you've met with agents and sponsors and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, well now I get to go out and actually do what I'm here to do. Let me find out what I'm supposed to do, right? Like nobody retires from the NBA and we remember them as the greatest all-star skills challenge performer, right?
I mean, speak for yourself. That's all I remember.
That would be something you remember, though. You'd be like, in '97, Clyde Drexler was phenomenal.
Calvin Knapp, favorite all-star.
I'm a Mike Conley all-star stan, personally. Second reserve last year.
There was an all-star in I think it's like the 1949, 1950 like range, somewhere around there. He was a one-time all-star. I cannot remember his name, but every time I do this quiz where it's like name every all-star ever.
Yeah.
And he's one guy I can never get because I cannot remember his name. But he made one all-star game in like 1949, 1950. And I'm like, what a claim to fame. I'd be talking about that till I died.
Yeah. I don't blame it. I bet he probably does.
He averaged like 4 points a game or something. But before the shot clock, that guy was a gunner.
True. Yeah. True. Takes 1.8 3-pointers a game. Yeah.
3-pointers back then. He's a genius.
Yeah. So I have a bone to pick with the NBA. There's a competition over the All-Star weekend that used to mean something. You know, it kind of died in 2017 because it will never be topped from Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon going back and forth, which is unfortunate, but, you know, at least we got to live through that. But it's labeled as the NBA dunk contest, right? Great name for it. However, that would imply that there are NBA players participating in said contest, right? And when I go to the Orlando Magic roster and I look for Mac McClung, who is now the back-to-back NBA dunk contest champion, he's nowhere to be found. And there's a simple reason for that. And that reason is because he doesn't actually play in the NBA. He's not an NBA player. He plays for their G League affiliate, which I don't even know the team name. I'm going to be 100% truthful. You could tell me they're the Mystics, which I know they're not because that's the WNBA team in Washington. But having Mac McClung be your back-to-back NBA dunk champion for two different NBA franchises, G League affiliate teams, seems a little bit ridiculous to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but it is awesome that he got the opportunity, and it's awesome that he won back-to-back. Like, that's super sick. But, like, you don't play in the NBA, man. Like the NBA should probably enforce the rules that are not in place. They should create a rule and then enforce it that an actual NBA player has to compete in the dunk contest.
I don't think they're good enough. Is the problem. Like, clearly he's the best dunker who's willing to do it. I think by a wide margin.
Yeah.
Like, who else is? Who else is going to show up?
I don't know.
Like,
that's the problem.
Yeah, at this point, I think you should do. Here's my because the problem with the dunk contest is you've done pretty much every dunk that's like reasonable,
Mm-hmm.
like for people who don't dunk professionally, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't practice dunks all the time. They're not like doing 100 takes to get like one example of a dunk right, because that's what everybody compares them to, and that's just not like possible in the dunk contest because you couldn't like redo takes over, like you get what their chances are, or a time limit typically.
Yeah.
But what they do is you make it a 2-on-2 competition, and you get a professional dunker with an NBA player, and they both have to do it. That way you get to see the cool dunks from the professional dunkers who practice it all the time, and then you get to see like the NBA players actually do it. So you get like 4 professional dunkers, 4 NBA players, and they draft each other.
Yeah.
Like the dunkers draft the NBA players.
Right. Okay.
I'm just trying to spice it up because unfortunately the NBAers cannot do dunks that are interesting anymore because they've been done. Like it's not fair. It's not fair to them. Like Vince Carter would not be able to do that many new dunks even today.
Right.
Like if Vince Carter came out, right? But you get guys who do like those scorpion dunks and like all those crazy ones, you know, that people have probably seen on social media but never like live. Bring those guys out. I would think it'd be interesting to do like a composite 2-on-2 or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. That's just get the larger basketball community involved. You know, because that's a small dunking community, but it'd be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That'd be interesting. I wish that NBA players would practice their dunks more so that they could compete, but I get it.
There's no point. Like,
no, you're right. You're right.
All you do is get hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I tried to do a 540 scorpion dunk and I broke my arm. Sorry, coach. Like, why'd you do that? I could just imagine the how angry a coach would be about that. But, you know, what are you gonna do? There's games to win.
Yeah, there's no real good answer to fixing these slight issues that the NBA has. They put on a good product. I will give them that. They make a good show of the weekend. The NBA does a good job hosting All-Star Weekend. It's just a matter of getting the player buy-in, which is a seemingly unsolvable issue that they have.
Yep.
Because they can only throw so much money at these guys to make it matter when guys like you and I get on podcasts and talk about legacy and how many championships and stuff like that. Like, that's just kind of how these players think about it. And I don't blame them one bit, truthfully.
Yep.
Okay. Now that we've ravaged the NBA enough for their All-Star weekend, we could shift.
That was pretty reasonable compared to social media.
That's fair. That's fair.
Social media is like, we should pull out all the people into the stockyards and kill them for not trying. And it's like, all right, let's calm down. Bring in more of these underclassmen. Yeah, I do think that's a good idea. Like, I think they're doing that, right? It's like the guys who don't like play much or the G League guys. I actually think that's a good idea. Like, let's if they're good enough. Like, the G League is the NBA. It's just it's the minor leagues of the NBA. You know, it's like close. And I'm not sure there's a lot of European dunkers out there, so not that I know of.
A lot of below the rim guys.
I wonder if Jan Vesely's available.
Probably.
Remembers Jan and his beautiful girlfriend that he brought with him to the draft. That's the only thing anybody remembers him for. But that guy could dunk and do nothing else.
It's like CeeDee Lamb at the NFL draft, taking his phone away from his girlfriend. His second phone.
Yeah. I do think it would be funny if she like takes his phone, he pulls out another phone. She takes that phone, he just pulls out another phone. He just got like He's just got like 16 phones he pulls out.
I got 7 burners, babe. Which one do you want?
It's like every time someone's fingerprint besides me touches, it burns the phone.
That's something an NFL wide receiver would come up with. He would pay somebody to develop that.
Yeah, 100%.
Just to protect himself.
I'm gonna patent it today.
I'll get CD on the line. He would invest. Shark Tank NFL edition.
Honestly, that'd be so rude if you went up there and were like, "Guys, I know you cheat on your girlfriends.
Let me help you with that."
Help me help you.
Oh man. Okay, so after we reasonably ravaged the NBA for their All-Star weekend, 10 o'clock the following morning on the East Coast, there were actual NBA headlines. One in particular coming out of Brooklyn, Jacques Vaughn, who was a 2-time interim head coach, and then last offseason received a multi-year head coaching extension to be the full-time head coach for the Brooklyn Nets, was fired. And not that shocking of a move. Brooklyn had pretty much fallen off a cliff. They're 21-33 out of the play-in tournament, the play-in tournament right now. The timing of it was a little interesting. I probably would have expected them to give him to the end of the year, and for the front office to tell him to play the young guys a little more. Whitehead and the kid who they drafted out of Alabama, whose name is absolutely blanking on me right now.
Clowney.
Yeah, Clowney. Because they've been playing Jalen Wilson. He's been getting minutes. But Whitehead is not playing hardly at all. And Clowney is also not playing at all. And the team is not good. They're trying to build around Mikal Bridges, which, I mean, sure, I guess he's a fine player, but he's number 3 on a championship team probably. They are promoting to the head coaching position, at least for the temporary time being, Kevin Ollie, who is a name that basketball fans will remember from his time coaching in college mostly. Won a championship with UConn. That being said, let me ask you, Ryan. Let me get your thoughts on the head coaching firing. Did you think the timing of it was did you think he should have been given to the end of the year? Did it surprise you that he was even fired at all? What do you think?
Yeah, he shouldn't have been fired. I don't think that makes any sense. The team is bad, but I don't think it was his fault. I don't think that's a super well put together team. And I think last year was maybe a little bit of a facade, like the end of last year. They really weren't that good. They I guess were sort of competitive in the playoffs, but they were never going anywhere, right? And they didn't make any moves that made me think they were getting better.
Right.
I don't remember. I remember in our betting show where we took over under win totals. I don't think I was over on them, but if I was, I don't think I was very high over because they didn't really do anything. I think they're fine. It just, where's the the floor is low for them, and the ceiling's not very high. And that's a bad spot to be in. And that's not Jacques Vaughn's fault. Yeah, I don't know if he put together the team. Maybe they're firing him because he made all these roster moves. I don't know. If that's the case, then sure. But I thought they were pretty well organized when I watched them. I thought they were a pretty well coached team. Defensively, I thought they were decent. They just don't have the juice offensively, I don't feel like. And I thought they're pretty well organized offensively. Just they don't have the guys. Who's scoring on that team? They got Mikal, who can score, but when he scores, he loses his defensive quality a little bit, as everybody does, right? That's how it works. You can't play both ends 100% of the time, 100%, at 100% speed. You got Cam Thomas, who can score with anybody, but he's not an NBA player right now. He's got to figure out how to do a lot of things. I just don't know where they get scoring from. Dorian Finney-Smith, noted offensive superstar. Like Ben Simmons is nothing. Like, they're just in a terrible spot. They remind me of the Blazers. We talked about for what, like 2 straight years. Blazers were in a bad spot. They needed to get off Dame because they were in a bad spot. The Nets are in the same spot but worse. They have no picks.
Yeah.
At least the Blazers could trade Dame and have some picks.
Yeah.
I mean, not many, but they could at that time. The Nets have no picks. They have a worse star that's worth less.
Yeah.
They have worse role players, you could argue, because Portland had like Jeremy Grant and like they had some. I mean, they still do, but they had like guys they could trade off of. I'm not sure the Nets have anything that's like super valuable that they could like rebuild the war chest with. Honestly, the Rockets offered them, I think what I heard was like Jalen Green and like their pick swaps back or something.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's as good as it's gonna get. Like every team knows those are the most valuable picks probably in the league right now because the Rockets control all of them. It's like you want those back.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just saying Mikal's like that 2 first in Jalen Green. Like, I mean, and then they're like, no, we'll just fire Jock Vaughn.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm not sure that they should have given Jock Vaughn the coaching job to begin with. Sean Marks has been there he was there with Kenny Atkinson, then they fired Kenny Atkinson, and then they hired Jock Vaughn, and then they hired Steve Nash, then they fired Steve Nash, then they hired Jock Vaughn, and now they give Jock Vaughn this extension. I'm not sure that they should have given Jock Vaughn the extension. I feel like they had plenty of time to determine whether Jock Vaughn was the coach that they wanted to go forward with, and giving him the extension just felt like it was a longer like tryout period for him. So I feel like they had enough time to determine that he was the guy or he wasn't the guy, and then they just kind of kicked the can down the road, and now they fired him rather than just letting him play out the last 25 games and firing him in the offseason, right? So like the move did not shock me. I was not surprised that they fired him. I was surprised that they fired him at the time that they did. Right after All-Star, like fire before All-Star, and then let him just go on his way. Like, because he probably worked over All-Star break, like to try to get this team back on track. Because they were not terrible at the beginning of the year. They were fine. Like, but yeah, I agree with basically everything you said. They're in a very bad position. I don't know that I'm not sure that they're in as bad of a position as Portland was, only because you said Mikal is not as valuable as Dame. I tend to disagree. I understand that Dame's a superstar and he's done incredible things in the league, but Mikal is younger, he's on a better contract, and he plays the position. When playing at an all-star level defensively, he's still a serviceable offensive player, whereas Dame has never been serviceable on the defensive side of the ball while playing at a superstar level offensively, right? And we know that when teams are in playoff contention, they look for the guys like Mikal Bridges and the Marcus Smarts and players of that caliber, right? Mikal's better than Smart, but that play, they can play the all-star defensive level and still be serviceable on the offensive side, right? So I think that his combined skill set with his age and his contract puts him at least the same level of value that Dame had at the end in Portland whenever Milwaukee made the move for him. I personally would value Mikal as at a higher trade value level than I would Dame. I think Nick Claxton is an interesting piece that could fit onto a contending team. He's an expiring contract. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't try to move him. I guess they want to try to win with this roster, and they view him as like a cornerstone piece, which like Claxton is good. I don't view him as a cornerstone center in the NBA, but I'm not a GM, so I can't. Nobody pays me to make those decisions, right? I feel that they should have done more at the trade deadline. You brought up the Houston deal. It was a lot of picks back, or it was a few picks and Jalen Green. Like what I read was they had 2 options, and they opted for neither of them with Houston, which is a little shocking to me. I think Houston is probably better with Mikal Bridges than they would be with Jalen Green. It moves their timetable up drastically. But they didn't want to do that. I get it, I guess. My assumption is that they're probably going to try to take a big swing at a free agent. But like within the last, since the Kevin Durant free agency choice, really, have there been huge free agency signings with superstars? Like Jimmy Butler, maybe. I mean, what I'm saying is like the way to acquire talent in the NBA now is via the trade market. Like that's just how that works. All these teams clamor over, we have this much cap space. Yeah, but like the contracts are so big in the NBA that like these teams can oftentimes keep their talent in-house unless he's just an unhappy superstar, in which case he signs the agreement and then demands a trade. So you're back to the trade market rather than the free agency, right? Like if you're Brooklyn, you're the second team in New York. This has been brought up throughout the year. Mikal Bridges, even like he went on the Josh Hart podcast, and they were making fun of him, talking about how it was a freaking home game for the Knicks in Brooklyn. It's a home game for everybody in Brooklyn because there are no Brooklyn fans. Like they just don't. They're not there. You know, I mean, I would have tried to make a move. Again, I'm not sure that Jacques Vaughn was the right coaching hire to begin with. Obviously, they agree with that now. 2020 hindsight, I probably would have let him play out the rest of the year, seeing what the young guys had, and then decide in the offseason what they want to do. But my assumption is they're going for a big free agency pickup, probably Donovan Mitchell. He's expressed wanting to play New York. But even if he goes to Brooklyn, let me ask you this. If Donovan Mitchell leaves this current Cavaliers iteration and goes to play for the current Brooklyn Nets iteration, which team is better with Mitchell? Because I know what I think.
So if Mitchell goes to the Nets?
Yeah.
I think the Cavs are better. You're saying like Mitchell Cavs versus Mitchell Nets. I think the Cavs are better personally. Honestly, not that far off though. I think probably pretty comparable quality. Different teams for sure. But
Yeah.
I think the Cavs have higher ceiling too because they could get a lot better. In my opinion.
Yeah.
They're pretty young still. The Nets are not that young. Nicholas Claxton's young, but like the rest of the team's not that young actually.
Yeah.
So Cleveland higher ceiling, but they're probably like equal footing.
Yeah. I think Cleveland's better. I don't think it's as close as you do. That's fine. Not shocking we disagree. But I think Cleveland is the better team. They have the higher ceiling. They have the higher floor. If he chose to go to New York to play for Brooklyn, it would be solely because it's in New York. I guess not solely. It would be twofold. It's in New York, and he wants to play with Mikal Bridges. Like that would just be why he wanted to go there, right? Because I think the money is going to end up being equal from both franchises. The bird rights, I'm not entirely sure how the bird rights work. I can do more research and figure that out, right? But I think the money is going to end up being the same from both franchises. But if I were him, I would not choose to go to Brooklyn over Cleveland. That's just me.
I agree. I think I do think Cleveland's better, and Cleveland has again way higher potential.
Yeah,
but maybe Brooklyn's more fun.
Yeah, maybe. All right, we're gonna shift one more time into my theory of the NBA future and how that's going to look. This is not necessarily an on-court future for the NBA. I think more of like an effort thing for the NBA and where they want to put their time and resources going forward as a league. So Adam Silver said a lot of interesting things at All-Star Weekend. He commented on the effort level of players. He commented on how people think the NBA has too much scoring and how the defensive effort is not there, right? That's not what I'm going to talk about, but I tend to agree with his response to that. It was basically saying the effort level is there. It's just the guys are so good now. And he does think that officiating plays a small role. And I believe he said they're going to make an effort to clean that up and tighten up some of the officiating, not calling out the officials and saying they're doing a bad job. He's saying that the rules have put them in such a position where it is extremely difficult to properly call NBA games now because of the wording of the rules and the compromised situation is a hot topic these days when talking about defensive calls. But so there's another quote that I want to read you that Adam Silver had this weekend. He said, "I'm not sure what the future of Team Ignite will be because before there was a hole in the marketplace that we thought we were filling before doing that. And now my focus is turning to earlier development of those players." So what I am going to ask you, Ryan, I promise ties into my theory on the future of the NBA. If I were to ask you, who are the 5 best basketball players in the world right now, what would your answer be?
Well, not including us, of course, because that's not
Well,
fair.
obviously, yeah. Well, we're in the 6 foot and under league. I'm talking the world.
Yeah, I'm the dominant center in the 6 foot and under league. Best 5 players. You got Jokic. You
Mhm.
got Luka. You got Shea. You got Giannis. And 5th, I mean, there's like probably 7 guys that I could put at 5, but we'll just say Kevin Durant because I know you you want to go international.
Okay, that's fair. I can't argue. I mean, that's a fair list, right?
Thank you.
I if you ask me, I'll give you mine.
Uh,
Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, Luka, Steph. I don't like the 5th is really arbitrary here in the point that I'm making, right? I think the 4, Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, Luka, in no particular order. There's a common denominator between those guys, right? None of them were born in America. They're not American players. They all hail from somewhere else. Now I know Embiid is going to play for the Team USA in the Olympics coming up. That's kind of an exception to the rule, right? The NBA has this thing called NBA academies, international academies. Embiid came through one in Africa. Pascal Siakam came through one in Africa. And the common theme with these guys coming through the NBA academies is that they get them at, like Adam Silver said in this quote, turning to earlier development of those players. When you're in Europe, and you know much more about this than I do, they have soccer academies, right? And they get these guys at 12, 11, 13 years old, somewhere around that range. And they take them out of school and they send them to these soccer academies where they also go to school, but they learn how to play soccer at a professional level from such a young age, and they develop them in these farm systems essentially so that they're ready to play professional by the time they're 17, right? Now, Luka in Spain has something like this. Luka went to Spain at a very young age and turned professional. I believe Gobert was an early professional in Spain. There are countries in the world that do this, but what the NBA is trying to do, and this is where I think they're shifting their focus to, specifically based off of what Adam Silver said, I think the NBA is going to put a lot more time and resources into their international NBA academies to try to tap into the foreign or the international talent, right? Because foreign implies that we have, it implies negative connotation to people outside of the United States. International talent, right? Grabbing from different talent pools across the world so that we can get more players like Embiid out of Cameroon. We can get more players like Luka out of Eastern Europe. He's from one of those countries. We can get more players like Victor Wembanyama out of France, and we can get them into the NBA pipeline at an early age so that we can essentially what the NBA wants to do is steal talent from the rest of the world, prevent them from playing in their professional leagues within those home countries, and pipeline them right into the United States to play in the actual NBA. Do you think I have a case based off of the quote that Adam Silver said? Do you think I'm far off? Do you think the G League is going to go away? I think in conjunction with this quote, the NBA's war on college basketball is going to go away too. And I think the one and done rule will be done away with here shortly, and they'll allow high school players to come in. But that's kind of separate. What I'm going to focus on is the international aspect in these NBA academies.
Yeah, I could definitely see a focus there. It more than anything, it's a marketing perspective, right? If you suddenly become the major sport in like an entire continent, that's like a big deal. Like they're probably the second biggest sport in Europe now. They're like the one or two in China. Like they've done a good job over the last 25-ish years or so of doing all this stuff. It's happened before that too, but they've
Right.
accelerated it obviously. So I could see like, well, the best way to develop is have people from that country playing in the NBA, right? That's like the best way to get like a fan base. Uh, I can imagine there's a lot of German fans out there because of Detlef Shrimp, and like still to this day, like they're like a Thunder fan because they like Detlef on the Sonics or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think that just from a marketing perspective is a good move. I think more focus on that and finding the diamonds in the rough is a good idea. I think the Ignite were a niche in the market, like they said, and I think it going away makes sense. I also think it hasn't been that successful from a player's perspective. Uh, I think, like, can you name an Ignite player that improved their draft stock? I think I've said this before, but can you name an Ignite player that improved their draft stock from playing in the Ignite? It's not very many. It might be one guy. It might be Marjan Beauchamp,
Yeah.
who was a community college guy who went to the Ignite and then was a first round pick
Yeah.
and was like a second round pick like early on. So he like jumped into the late first. Like everybody else has been like stayed where they are. Like Jalen Green was expected to be a top 3 pick. He didn't go number 1, so like he didn't really improve much.
Right.
This year, Ron Holland looks like he's falling down draft boards because he's had a bad year at the Ignite. Bazulis is having a rough year. Like, I don't know. I'm just commenting. I don't think they've done a great job for the players. Scoot, same thing. Like, Scoot didn't improve his, like, he stayed where he was. I guess there was nowhere to go, really. Like, you weren't facing
Right.
Wemby. He didn't go down, but, like, how many guys have been like, oh, they're I guess, like, Dyson Daniels maybe is like a guy too, but, like, there's not that many. The overtime elite, I think, is going to start like filling in that hole probably, as I talked about before. And I think college will become, because of the NIL agreements, will be a more reasonable thing. So yeah, the NBA has got to look for other ways to fill in those gaps. I always think there will be a place for the G League writ large, because I think the minors of the G League is important to see guys who might not be good till they're 25. Like that happens all the time, and then they become an NBA player, right? Like that happens all the time. Your Robert Covingtons of the world and those types of guys. But yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked to see NBA like junior leagues popping up like all over the place.
Like
Like,
internationally or
yeah,
clandestine.
yeah, no, yeah, internationally, where they're like, hey, this is a NBA Africa under 18,
Yeah.
like or under 15, where that like even younger than that, probably I would assume like under 16, under 15 would be where they're looking for guys to send to America
Yeah.
once they hit like high school age. Like I know that's already happening, and as more guys come from those areas, they will also go back and continue to, like Luau Deng is in Africa, like doing this stuff. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
He is.
and there's guys who like were brought up in the system and maybe didn't play in the NBA, but like did participate. Also, like they're trying to like foster it. So it would not surprise me that the bang for the buck there is pretty good. And the Ignite just hasn't been that. uh, I'm not sure they've made a lot of money off of the Ignite. They probably lost money, like by a lot, I would imagine.
Probably.
So yeah, I just think it makes sense from a business perspective, a marketing perspective, and like how many guys are out there that could play in the NBA that we just don't know about? Probably a few.
Yeah.
It's just hard to get over. So I think it's good from a meritocracy perspective. If the NBA is a meritocracy, then allowing people the opportunity makes it more of a meritocracy, right? So I'd like to see it because I'd like to see good people play.
100%. Yeah, anything to get the talent pool elevated, I think is a good thing for the NBA because we're at such a point in the NBA where the talent is greater than we've ever seen, and we still have not fully tapped into the global talent market. Right now, I don't expect the NBA to go over to Europe and become the number one popular sport there. Right, like that, they have generations of soccer fans there that it probably will never be swayed, right? Like they're going to be soccer all the time. But I do think that, you know, you could go to East Asia or you could go to South America. Yeah, they're pretty into soccer down there too. But like you can go into Africa and places, and you can find diamonds in the rough in these guys. It just takes people to get there, and it takes people to get them on the court and talent evaluators to be able to see. And I really think that you brought up a lot of good points with the Ignite. That like I don't think it's been a successful proof of concept for guys going there to improve their draft stock, right? But if there are players that are able to get into these camps and these academies at an earlier age, and they are able to hone their skills to then make it to the Ignite, and not just go to the Ignite right out of like a community college or local high school, right? Then potentially, if they're able to be coached and honing their skills from a younger age, and then go to the G League, then we can see the G League become a more profitable is not the right word, but a more successful plan and a more successful path to the NBA than it currently is, right? Because as it's currently constructed, like you said, a lot of the guys that go to the Ignite are guys that were going to be drafted anyways. It's just Beauchamp is maybe the only one that went from second to first round. And based off his NBA career so far, he probably was a second round draft pick anyways, right? Like it just hasn't really panned out for him in the league.
And look what happened to Leonard Miller. Leonard Miller went from a guy who was a projected lottery pick, and he could have came out that year. Johnny Manziel, of course we get it.
Yeah.
You're the worst.
We're gonna go see him in a few weeks, dude. Relax. Don't talk shit yet.
Sorry. Love you, Johnny.
My boy.
Leonard Miller could have went out. He was at like a Canadian academy. You know, they do like post high school academy they do in Canada. He was there for 1 year, and they were like, hey, if he goes out, he's like this 6'10", like ball handling, you know, guy. We'll take him like late first into the lottery to the late first. Like that's kind of where the range was. He went to the G League Ignite, and I actually thought played like relatively well. And he went in the second round.
Yeah.
And it's like, so all these evaluators were like, oh, he's at the academy. He's a first round pick. He went to the Ignite and played again. I thought, well, and is now a second round pick. I still think he'll be a good player, but like that, how many millions of dollars did he lose? Like, potentially, like if he doesn't get enough playing time to get a second contract, like he lost millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing for a lot of guys that supposedly step up a level of competition. I would argue that there are some college teams that are better than Ignite teams, but they go to a league where it's pitched to them that, hey, you come here, you get better, you get drafted higher, and it just doesn't seem to work that way for most of the guys. I do think one benefit of having a G League, and you said that it's not going to go away, and I agree with that. I don't know if it's going to fully go away. There will always be some sort of minor league for basketball. I think one of the most important roles that it plays is for injury recovery and for rookies who are just not getting minutes in the NBA, but like are obviously going to be NBA players. We saw both the Thompson twins play in the G League this year at different points, right? You see it all the time. It's like, oh, I don't know. Porzingis is working back from an injury. He's playing G League games, right? Like there are guys that sustain injuries in the NBA that need to get minutes on a court, but they're not ready for the 5-on-5 NBA yet. So they send them to the G League to play for a little while. And I think it does serve a beneficial purpose from that aspect of it. So I agree with you that it's not fully going to go away, but I think in the terms of it being a pipeline to feed NBA talent going into the draft, I think that is something the NBA is going to look to tweak and to put more of their focus on these international academies to get a wider talent pool to choose from. That's my theory.
Do you know what the Ignite's record is in the G League this year?
No.
I'm trying to get their. Okay, so last year they went 11-21. So they were not the worst team in the league, but they were close to the bottom.
Yeah.
They were 4 games off the worst team, right? Not a great development place to get crushed by professionals.
Yeah.
Like every night, right? But this year, where they have a lot of guys who are projected first rounders. They have like 4 or 5, like they do every year. They're 2-19. They have a minus 12.5 differential.
Yeah.
They're just getting smashed by people. Like, and these guys are pros. Like, these are all D1 guys, like, that are fringe NBA players. Like, of course, they're going to get smashed. Like, there's 28-year-olds in the G League who, like, that's all they're ever going to do, but they're 28, and these guys are all 18, 17, 18, right? But, like, development-wise, that's got to be rough on you. Like,
Yeah.
at least if you go to Duke, like, you at least go 500, you know?
Yeah, 500. Yep, that's Duke for you.
I mean, that's like
Eighth
a
ranked
bad,
team in the country.
that's a bad year, but you know I'm saying at least.
At least you win some games. Yeah.
Like how many top 10 prospects played that level of losing
Ever.
in college?
Yeah. Not many.
Is the only guy Patrick Baldwin Jr. who went to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So he didn't even go to a big school. He went to play for his dad. He went to Milwaukee. And it's like everybody else is like, even if they don't play, they're not losing like that. Like,
yeah. And he was the best player on the court like every time they played.
Yeah, they like
everybody else.
They like quadruple teamed them. So.
Yeah.
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 I don't know. Maybe that hurts them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible.
And then they go to the worst teams in the league and they lose some more.
And they lose more, and then you have Cade Cunningham. It's like,
well, he went to college. Let's be honest.
I know, but I'm talking about losing. They weren't a great team when he was at Oklahoma State. He was just way better, right? And then he's on a terrible team in the league. It's like all he knows is losing.
Yep.
I should have done a better job setting this up when I started. I talked about the Ignite going away, and then I had said the G League was going away. The G League is not going anywhere, but Team Ignite in the G League, I would not be shocked if Team Ignite is dissolved and they use other avenues of getting. The G League is not going anywhere. That will be a thing for as long as the NBA is around.
I knew what you meant. That's what he talked about. That he specifically was talking about the Ignite.
Exactly. Yeah. I know that you knew what I meant, but I feel like I didn't do a good enough job setting it up. The G League is not going to go anywhere. Team Ignite, which are draft prospects that are hoping to make NBA, to be drafted and then make NBA rosters, they have the option to go play in the G League for the Team Ignite before actually being NBA players. And that's why they're so bad. It's because they're playing against actual, former or current NBA players, right? Like that's kind of how that works. But again, I'm buying stock in NBA international academies. I think those within the next decade, right? I think the NBA is going to put a lot of time and resources into developing those to gather from a larger talent pool across the globe.
Don't blame them.
Yep, not at all.
There's a lot of people on this earth who are tall.
You can't teach that. I've tried. I've read many books.
Have to be tall for dummies.
Yeah, I guess I'm too dumb. Which is very possible.
You're too smart for them.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You got to read How to Be Tall for Perfectly Average People.
Oh, yes, true. Yes, I'm nowhere above average in the smarts category. That's for sure.
Well, I meant just in your life, not
oh, my life is just perfectly average.
Yeah, like some
That's
above,
fair.
Some's below, but you're right in the middle.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I'm not from Texas. I can't compete.
I'm average too, just in different ways.
Oh, okay. Well, now that we've established that you and I are both completely average individuals, that brings us, I believe, to the conclusion of our show. We hit all the topics we discussed coming in the pre-show. I know it was a little bit delayed, and we do apologize for that. Like I said, things happen. This, believe it or not, is not my full-time job. So, life gets in the way every once in a while. That being said, Ryan, do you have closing thoughts for the people? Give us a nugget. Give us something to chew on for the next 7 days.
Gosh, just so many things in my mind that are not worth saying. Glad that basketball's back tonight. Yeah, as you know. Glad basketball's back tonight. There's some good games. Phoenix Dallas is playing right now. Pretty good game. Houston New Orleans, good game. Yeah, another average guy in the chat. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I'm just happy to have it back. Excited to see kind of after the trade deadline where things go.
Yeah.
after the All-Star break. Should be interesting. We'll separate the whatever that phrase is, wheat from the chaff, or I don't know. I'm not a farmer.
Wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah. You nailed it. You nailed it. Perfectly average saying there.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I'm excited to see how specifically the Western Conference shakes out. I think there's like 6 teams within 4 games of each other right now, or something like that, all competing for spots. It's going to be exciting, as it always is down the stretch of the season. But that's another episode for us, dude. Another episode. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be back the same time next Thursday night to have actual NBA games to talk about. We appreciate all the interaction and the comments from everyone in the chat. We are out of here.